everybody, and welcome to the history program with me, Tony Browne, talking to you on Lir Media in the middle of Limerick. And with me, Tom Donovan. And hello, Tom, first of all.
Hello, Tony. Good to be back.
Good to be back, is it? And, Tom, I have to say, first of all, I'm very pale in this picture here in front of me. You're not too bad. You're a bit colourful, but I'm very pale. I'm like a fellow out of a home. Anyway, history, anyway, Tom, as you know, is an interest of mine. History and music is all I'm interested in.
Yeah.
Much the same as you.
Well, you must be interested in sports, seeing as the Champions League final is on right now. Yeah. Anyway, we'll move on to that.
Oh, I love that. We'll move along swiftly. As you know, like when we started the Limerick Historical Society, I think it was in 2013, I think. Around that anyway.
7 years ago.
Yeah, we seem to be doing very well anyway on both outings and lectures, attendance-wise.
Well, so one man predicted that we wouldn't last a year, so we have multiplied that by 7 so far.
Yeah,
despite
that would you last on your own? And anyway, but although another man said it was a kind of a dictatorship.
Oh yeah. Well, he's probably right there.
Yeah. We've had good. We were very lucky with the lecturers that we had.
The difference is when you started off in history, and I started later than you, but like there was very few people interested in history then compared to now, you know, and it was mainly academics and I suppose people from the upper classes were interested in history. You know, poorer people hadn't the time or the money to get involved in history.
That's true, because what reminds me is the oration that Gallo Tui gave at Jim Kemmy's funeral. He said that, as you know, that people are they don't go to the academics anymore for information, go to the local person, who has most of the knowledge anyway. Yeah,
and that's true, because, I mean, if you want to know the history of, Abbeyfeale or anywhere, you go out there and you meet the person that's on the ground and knows that you can learn. Like I've often said to you, I could write a history of Dundalk in the morning. I lived there for 6 months. But I mean, it would only be taken out of books and references. But you want a true history, you have to talk to the people. You know,
but that's true, because you know, I've met academics who've written books, and when you quiz them, they can't answer you. They've forgotten. It's just a job to most of them. They've no love really for local history, except people like Gallo Tui now and then. I suppose you can count them really in one hand, the people that are really interested in history.
Well, I had Gallo Tui in Galway, and I mean, going back to originally, there was a teacher in school who got us interested in history because he taught local history. He taught you about local faction fight, you know, fellas who fought, men who fought in faction fights, and that. He'd be brought up under GDPR now for mentioning names, but he got us interested in, and he brought back things to a local level, you know, and told us what happens. You know, if you're teaching Irish history, he'd mention locals who were involved, and it brought it to a local level. Because sometimes history is taught, you know, about Renaissance periods and medieval times, and to a primary school student, that's meaningless stuff, you know. And the problem is nowadays a lot of people aren't studying history because it's too vast a subject. The curriculum is too vast.
But that's like, if I go to a couple of schools I've gone to over the years, that I'd never give dates, because dates don't mean anything, especially to younger children. You talk about 1446 up to 1780 or whatever it is. The human mind can't take in dates anywhere, really, you know, 6 or 8 dates together. They remember the name, if you give a good name, okay, to something. Although when I was starting to go to school in history, because what I know now are they're miles apart. You know, the myths that are out there. Because there's a good program on BBC lately now, I think she's excellent, Lucy Worsley, where she has stopped some of she calls them great fibs of history. Things we were told that are completely untrue, and that were kind of added to over the years, you know, which is it's a pity that the wrong message goes out at times.
Yeah. and she goes in. She was in America recently as well, and she went through all the different stories about the Civil War, which was a fascinating story, because you accept what you're told a lot of the time.
We do. Yeah. I mean, what got me interested in history was really, I suppose, I left school at 14. I didn't get much training in history when I was going to school. What I was told, as I said there a minute ago, was completely wrong. Things like Cromwell, for example, that you were told that I was told that he was a Protestant and he hated Catholics. And now I know different. You know, that he wasn't, he didn't like Protestants either. That like he was a Puritan. And that didn't even come into the equation, the Puritan. I didn't know what a Puritan was. You know, till my sister came here on holiday in 1976. And she knew more about Limerick than I did, I thought. Somebody coming over from England and her husband. And then reading Mannix Joyce and the Limerick Leader. I often read his articles in the Leader. And like that again, he was visiting places in County Limerick I'd never heard of. It's amazing that what you learn, if you want to learn, I suppose. If you have an interest in something, you learn.
My daughter asked me recently, where's Atlaka? You know, she never heard of Drummond Atlaka. She never heard of it. And she works in Charleville. She just saw the address and she was wondering where it was. It's amazing people grow up in County Limerick and they don't even know about their own county, you know.
No.
So, and like, young people now are traveling all over the world. Well, they were up to this year, you know, going for weekends to Prague and to Berlin. But I think one good thing about the COVID is making people appreciate our own country, you know, and learning more about it.
To a degree, the only thing I see on the weekend paper, especially the magazines, they're promoting places to visit, but they seem to be the same places all the time. You know, there's so much out there. There's programs on television. I was watching one there 2 weeks ago, where I can't think of her name, it doesn't matter. She was traveling around in a camper van, and she jumped from one end of the country to the other. There's so much in the area, you know, in one particular area. What's his name? John Creedon did the same. He jumped, you know, like a flea all over the place. And it's a pity that there's so much in one area that could be looked into. But that doesn't seem to be the case.
Well, my daughter was in Donegal recently. She sent me a photo of the oldest bridge in Ireland, if not Europe. And it was built by St. Patrick in the 6th century. So I said, kind of two things. First of all, I can't imagine St. Patrick mixing bricks and mortar. And secondly, the fact he died in year 492. She showed me the plaque, like, built by St. Patrick in the 6th century.
It's total rubbish, But it's like, St. Patrick, for example. I did a program a few years ago, I might remember, on RTE on St. Patrick. And I was talking about the places that he visited. And if he'd gone to all the places we're told, he must have went round in roller skates.
Yeah.
We were told he went on a donkey. There were no donkeys in Ireland at that time, which is hard to believe. And so how did he go around? And he wasn't dressed in green either, with a big float, a big tall hat on him. And he probably had some kind of a closure, all right, as a walking aid.
Yeah.
But the myths that we hear over the years, you know, it's a pity that the truth isn't told.
Well, we mentioned Old Abbey there earlier. There's a stone out in Knockpatrick where he's left his Prince of his knees after he blessed the county's Kerry. He hadn't time to go into Kerry. I was afraid to go into Let's Kerry from Knockpatrick.
The same with Knockpatrick. He's supposed to bless Clare from the top of Knockpatrick.
Yeah.
That's because you can see over at the County Clare from Knockpatrick.
Yeah.
So you'd wonder, we know that he did exist. There was a fella existed, the holy man Patrius, that we know who left the Confessor left. I suppose he left writings, but we don't know some of the sayings, if they're true or if they're untrue. You know, there were these holy people, okay, that we know about. But you mentioned Old Abbey there, out near Shannagolden. It's a beautiful place. A pity that there are more architectural students brought there to see the amount of buildings that are still there.
There's a columbarium there, Dovecote.
Dovecote, yeah.
Same as one in Adair. And beautiful old buildings. I mean, there was a book done there a few years ago, on old ruins of Ireland, and they use a lot of pictures from Old Abbey because inside it, it's kind of, it's like you could do a ghost film in there. It's all overgrown now, but you can see the architecture is brilliant there for.
Even there's a big fish pond there as well, and there's lots of other outbuildings there. That we forget that. Like again, I was never told that the monks how they lived and what they ate and how they did everything for themselves, and the amount of them. There must have been thousands of monks, you know, in all these various monasteries around the country up to the time of the dissolution of the monasteries with Henry VIII. But before that, the amount of then again, people had nothing else to do. You know, it's like making something like, I don't know, I can't think of things that people say, wouldn't the great people to make this or make that? But I think if it had no distractions, there's no mobile phones that could be gawking into for hours on end, you know, and no television. So there's nothing else to do, some of them.
The famous line in Hamlet, the Shakespeare play, where he says to get thee to a nunnery. And like, if a woman was married, you know, the thing was...
to a nunnery.
I know there's one family in Glen, and there was eight children. The eldest boy to go to the farm. The youngest boy was weak, and he stayed at home on the farm and died young. And the other 6 joined the religion. There's 4 nuns and 2 priests. Christian priests. So I mean, they were looked after that way, you know.
Oh yeah. So even up to about, I suppose, 10 years ago, well, 20 years ago anyway, especially if you're from a country, a rural area. The eldest son, as you said, got the farm. The second son became a minister and went into the church, a priest. Yeah. The third son usually went into the guards. The next one after that was a school teacher. Yeah. And even to this day, if you get anybody old in those lines, a priest will tell you he's a brother of the guard, a brother of the school teacher. You know, it's amazing. And where's the eldest brother? He's at home on the farm. And the thing was to marry off the girls. The girls were useless, just to marry them off and hoping they got handy husbands. And of course, the big thing was to have a son, a priest, and a daughter in him. Yeah, it was a big thing as well. But they've changed over the years, which is a bad sign in one sense, because that brings me to Limerick now and the orders. We were lucky in Limerick for doing research into the religious orders in Limerick, that we had so many here. Yeah. You know, you had the Redemptorists, you had the Jesuits, the Dominicans, the Franciscans, the Augustinians. We never had the Cistercians here, and which is funny, really. But it was great. But now, with the demise of the Dominicans and the Franciscans, the Jesuits have gone. Luckily, that has been taken over by another French order. But it's a pity that they've gone.
Yeah. The Dominicans are taken over by Texan nuns.
Nuns, yeah. Which is a good thing in that sense. You know, the same with the brothers who were out in Maras. Yeah. But it's a pity that the old, what we knew, the established orders have gone. That were here since the 1200s. The Dominicans were here, you know, in 1220, which isn't today yesterday.
I was looking at a book by Brother Fahey. He did 2 books on the priests and the religious in Limerick. And the thousands of, and he hasn't, I know from around Glinda, I'd say he's only scratching the surface. He hasn't all of them. But there's thousands of them.
Amazing, amazing book, amazing.
Yeah, and the amount of you know, nuns and priests. But and I know Bishop Fleming gave him good help with that. But it's amazing, like your families, 8 and 10 people in even down through generations. You know, it's. And there was an ordination in Knock today, and it was a unique occasion. Like, I think it's the first ordination this year in the Catholic Church.
That's great, isn't it? Yeah. Sad in one sense, you know, that we've come to this. Like the same with the nuns. I mean, how many nuns are left now? It's a pity, you know, that these things happen.
That's why the nuns of the Dominicans are unique. They're young, you know.
They're very young, yeah. I've often spoken to them now. They kind of look at me then out to them out because they're so used to people being basically not interested, you know, in them. Yeah, but you'd wonder, like, I remember being with a priest one day, and I was in the car with him, and we were driving out near Newcastle West, out towards Duncullough. And when we were going along in the car, he said to me, Now, I can't remember the exact names, but I remember him saying to me, you see that house over there? Father, what's his name, came out of there. See the house over there? Sister, what's her name now, was there. See the house over there on the other side? Sister, was. He went through all in that particular area, going back towards Duncullough. The amount of villages that came from that area, even to this day, some of the priests in Limerick are from that general area, between, we'll say, from there going back west, going back towards Newcastle West, Duncullough.
Northeast Limerick, Mount Collins, Drumcullough, Rabbit, they produce more priests and nuns. If you look at the book, there's families of Collinses and Curtins.
Oh, yeah.
And it's hard to know who were brothers, who were sisters, even, because there's so many of them. And then a lot of them went abroad, and the last, like, you know, we had so many priests and nuns, we had to export them. A lot went to America, Africa, and the missions, you know, to Australia, to hundreds of priests and nuns in Australia. A lot of them are forgotten, you know. But I'd say, you know, the third book with the ones he left out, you know. But
it's hard to believe there's so many, you know.
Yeah.
But getting back to local history, it's a pity that it's not pushed more in the schools, you know.
Yeah.
That years ago, as you know, the teachers, I felt they were that bit more interested, whereas now the teachers are not interested, really. That's what I put it down to.
You have a few, but like the thing is, what's happening is they've been taught in primary school, and my children, even though they were interested in history, shied away from the Leaving Cert history because there was too much work in it. It's a huge curriculum, and now to get points, then you neglect your other subjects if you do history. And what's happening now, I hear, is a lot of people aren't doing history for the Leaving Cert and going to college and doing it, taking it up then. But you've lost 6 years of education, and you have to pick up. And even in colleges, they're not allowing people to study, we'll say, a period. You have to do too much background and long periods. So, like, I think, like, even in academics, they specialize. They don't, and that is the problem. Like, you know, you have an academic who'd be like up in this war of independence and civil war, but they know nothing about the famine or, you know, things that happened, white by outrages or anything like that. And like, you know, they pigeonhole their history, you know, which is not beneficial. Huh?
It's really a pity.
Yeah.
I've been to a few schools now over the years and trying to explain to them things. And then it's very difficult when you know you're gone out the door and that's the end of it. You know that you won't be back, kind of. And it's a pity that, I mean, I've told children things in schools and they were looking out through their mouths at me, you know, what they had heard at home. Yeah. And my mother said this, and there's so many myths out there. I mean, I know you can have a laugh talking about things that, like ghost stories, and this fella was seen here and this fella was seen there. But then you want to be serious as well and be more factual with it.
Yeah. Well, if you mix in like little stories with it, but I found, like, I was amazed. You know, there was a good teacher in Glyn, and he's retired, and I was out there last year, and then I was out 2 years before that, and I asked somebody, did they know where Ballycalhan was, the townlands, and they hadn't a clue. They knew their own address, but they wouldn't know where the other townlands were, or where. And I showed them a map up on the screen of the townlands, which I then forgot the next day. You know, and like, that's something that's been lost. You know, the townlands names.
I blame the post office now for a lot of that, because people are allowed to give addresses that are fictional. You know, they're actually not living there at all.
Yeah.
And I maintain as well, for every 5 townlands, you end up with 1.
Yeah.
You know, people give an address, and I'd say, if you look at the telephone book, I suppose you could say I have a sad life looking at the telephone book, but look at addresses, they're completely wrong. You know, what's in the telephone book, I'd say they're living miles away from there. But people want to add value to houses in as well, to say they're living in a certain area.
This week, I saw a house for sale in Adair. It was 1 mile from Ballingarry and 3 miles from Cork, and this was Adair.
But that gets back to the post office or the auctioneers. They're going by postal addresses. In Limerick, people say, "Oh, I've cost so many." And they say, but it's easier for the postman. They give Grange, Kilmallock. I would like to be walking from Grange to Kilmallock. Be a fair walk now. You know, why they can't stick to one area and say where it is. In Limerick, even, as you know, I wrote an article in the Old Limerick Journal about Ballinacurra, for example. And you take an area like Ballinacurra, where is, if you stop somebody getting off a train, if somebody got off a train and they asked you, they had an address like Ballinacurra, where would I find Ballinacurra Bowman? They'd say to you, what? Well, I never heard of it. You have Ballinacurra, all right. You're not looking for Ballinacurra Weston. Now, they know where Weston is, but what happened to Ballinacurra Hart and Ballinacurra Bowman? It's amazing the way one name stays on. You know, how is it Ballinacurra Weston is able to survive as Ballinacurra Weston? That the whole the townland of Ballinacurra was split into three.
Yeah.
But again, the other two names have lost, which is it's a shame when that happens.
Yeah. A lot of places were known after the landowner, which Hart and Bowman were. And I don't. Who was Weston?
But they're not interested half the time, you know. It's a pity that they had to get out there. I explained who Weston was, I explained who Hart was, and Bowman, and how they got the land. And then people wonder about who should you call places after? I mean, we have a place in Limerick called Verical Gardens. I mean, Verical robbed the city. Yeah. They robbed everything, the corporation, Verical and Roach. And still you had these people in who decided we'll call it Verical Gardens.
We covered that in the walk, didn't we? The St. Michael's Commissioners, you know, and the Athenaeum, which is the city conference. Like the reason they set up, the new town wouldn't accept because they were sucking in their money from the new town and squandering it, and it wasn't until Spring Rice put a stop to it. But you know, like people think that corrupt politicians are a thing of today, but it's down to
it's a pity that with something like that. I mean, I know most of the streets in Limerick, for example, are called after the Perrys. Most of them, not all of them. And after the Arthur family, who owned that portion of the city, you wouldn't mind somebody calling something once they own it. But there are some dreadful names out there in housing estates and places that you wonder. I submitted a list to the corporation about 20 years ago on names, people that should have been kind of, let's say, if you want to call it honoured, but the whole thing was ignored, you know. With a fascination with kind of calling places after people that have nothing at all got to do with the city, which it's a pity.
Then, I mean, a Sinn Féin councillor a number of years ago wanted to rename William Street because it's named after King William. And he obviously didn't do his research, you know.
Tell me about it. I mean, oh God, you'd wonder, like, you know, that because you see next year now they're going to elect a mayor from the public.
Yeah.
Now, who's going to be? Should he or she be involved with political parties? I don't think so, because if you do, you're having the same thing again about this disagreement you all make. I mean, it's disgusting when you think about it. You know, that at least Jim Kemmy got the honour of being mayor in 1990. It was great for him at the time. He was very lucky, because I'd say a few of them would have rather kept him out at the time.
I mean, Kemmy, like, wasn't. I know he wasn't liked because his politics, you know, because he wasn't part of the establishment.
Yeah.
And like he tell you himself, like he was at a book launch one night, and someone told him that a child said to her, "Is he the man that murders babies?"
Yeah, mention it.
Yeah.
See, but I don't know. I mean, you could be arguing this till the cows come home. But Kemmy did himself, and Kevin Hannon did an awful lot to it for local history.
Oh yeah.
You know, they were never kind of recognised for it, in a sense. You know.
Before you had any internet or email, he set up the Old Limerick Journal back in the 70s. You know, 79, and like that was it wasn't easy back then to to write articles. And like I told you before, he got a guy who had paper bags from Helpin's Tea, and he wrote the article on it. And he's put carbon paper into the middle, and he'd keep a copy of the article. He'd write it on the back of the bag. He'd tear off the top of the bag, then and number the pages. So he'd give him 5 or 6 pages with the outside of the bag off Helpin's Tea, and he had a copy kept in with his carbon paper. You know, I mean, like that's the kind of thing he was getting back then. All handwritten articles.
Well, you remember Larry Walsh used to say the same when Larry was a curator of the museum. He's the best curator we ever had in the museum. And he used to arrive into Larry with 5 or 6 pages. And he said to Larry, here, make an article out of that. That Larry'd say, Kemi just handed him in these pages written in longhand, But Kevin Hannon, although Kevin Hannon, his book, it's a pity, it was the best book launch I think I was ever at for a book to sell.
Yeah.
It sold out at the launch. The only thing is there's no references in it, which is a pity.
Yeah. Because
you should have, that as you know, as editor of the Old Limerick Journal, you will not accept an article without sources.
Well, the reason you don't is because someone can come back afterwards, and I've said this to people, and say, that's right, that's wrong. But even if it's wrong, you can say, look, this is where I got it from. I got it from the Limerick Chronicle. I got it from Begley's History of Limerick or Lennon's History of Limerick. At least then you have a reference. And it's not something you've made up. So the problem with Kevin Hannon, I'm not saying there's anything untrue in it, but it's very hard. And he probably got it out of the newspapers. And I said to a guy recently who was writing a book, he had a lot of things out of the newspapers, but he didn't have the dates in. So I said, you have to put in the references because to show people this is where it came from, and that's the problem with even ones with bad indexes. I was reading a book on jewels by Professor Kelly.
Well, yeah.
Like he has Limerick in 2 pages, but when you read the book, there's loads of references to Limerick, but he hasn't put them in, So it's just a poor. It'd be much easier for me rather than reading the whole book to go and look at all the Limerick references. And actually, Daniel Collin fought a few duels in Limerick, which I didn't know. He fought one at the Windmill with a fella called McGrath, who was a solicitor. And they had a row. It was 1813. They had a row in the courthouse, and he kicked O'Connell bested McGrath, and he kicked him under the table. And O'Connell took exception, and they went down, and they went to fight a duel in the Windmill, and they backed off. They fired shots and backed off. But O'Connell was accused of being cowardly after that, and that's how he goaded the stair into a duel and shot the stair because he was going to lose credibility by not having blood on his.
Yeah. Because the stair had actually, funny you mentioned the stair now, the stair had a house in Limerick.
Yeah.
They had the Black Slave, do you remember afterwards? A house which is in ruins now, just after the Condell Road.
Yeah.
And but like that, that's in ruins over with the stairs. Of course, that was a Clare family. Land outside in 6 Mile Bridge.
Who was the family? Was it Wilson? Who owned that stair? Who had the Black Slave? It wasn't the stair.
Who had the what?
Who had the Black Slave? It wasn't the stair.
No, it wasn't the stairs. The stairs were gone at that stage. I can't think the family that were there. They had a little black. But that's written about. John Curtin did that in one of the Old Limerick journals.
Yeah, in that house.
In that house, yeah. Clonmackin house.
Yeah. And
it's in ruins now. Only bits of it left.
Yeah.
It's a pity because it was a lovely house facing onto the river.
Yeah.
The entrance would have been down along Boreen from where Ivan's shop was there, right down along the side of that. Right down to the house. So I think O'Brien Kelly's were there. I think they were the last occupiers of the house. But it's a shame it's in such a state now.
Yeah, it was a name like Parker or something. Some fellow.
They had the little slave there, yeah. But like that, well, if anybody wants to read it, they'll find it in one of the Old Limerick journals. Send them down to Mike Maguire below in the City Library.
I was only looking there recently. It's amazing the amount of stuff that's on the local Mike Maguire's history site.
Yeah, the website, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he has, he has all journals. I think even the Palace Green journal is going up now.
Yeah.
I was sat there recently. What am I keeping all these old journals for? And they're going up on the website, even the Old Limerick journal now is up there, and you can go in and look up.
Now, would you like to have? I would rather have what do they call it now? At the hard copy.
Yeah.
I'd rather have the article in my hand rather than reading it on the internet. It's very handy for find something on the internet, but then it's handy to have the article in front of you. Read it.
I remember Jim Kemmy years ago asked me, could I do an index of the old literature? And the reason I did it, he said, he used to keep his books, he has so many books, he used to keep his journals up in the attic. And he'd think of an article, he'd go up into the attic, he said, to read an article. And when he'd go up, he'd pick up and he'd start reading something else. Half an hour later, he'd come down. And then he'd go. And he said, like, if you had the index, you could go in and look at where it was.
Yeah. But then, if you find, I often pick up a book and I look at the index and I'm gone away again with the fairies. I start looking at something that I didn't start off with.
That's the thing.
And you start reading something else in the thing, which is funny.
My daughter said to me today, I'm so tired these days, I can't, she's only half my age, like, she said to me, I fall asleep when I'm reading the book. And I said, that's one of the pleasures of reading. I said, you can have a sleep, I said, wake up and you can start reading again, But no, I mean, like, sometimes going into books and looking at different things, you find different, even that book on the jewels now, you can go in and look at, you see other names, you say, I must look him up now, and you can Google them. It's like once you read books, you're never idle, like, you'll always find something to read,
I often started in one book and went from that to another book and went from that to another book. I often had 5 books at 5 different pages open, and then I forget what I started off with. But if you can maintain something and you learn, if there's only one item, it's something, that you learned.
Yeah. Like I was reading the Jewel book and I saw about Veriker being killed. And I went into Tom Tummy's book then and Harry Greensmith's
Harry Greensmith, yeah.
Oh, and they had that covered in there. I'm reading that and I saw something about a white boy killing out in the Mungo. I started reading that. It's amazing how, you can get into.
I was never told anything going to school about white boys, what they were, about land agitation, and what went down in the country, especially in the 1800s, with land agitation.
No, I mean, we were told about the famine, but I didn't realize that there was more than one famine, and that.
Yeah.
Poverty and hunger. There was nothing about the land wars. We learned about the land acts, but it meant nothing to us. But if when I tell, say, kids in school, I go and tell them that, your farm is owned by, say, Kitchener, or your farm is owned by the United Lane, or your farm is owned by whatever it was, and you go along and you say, and then in the 1880s they bought it out, or 1900s. But at least then they can identify with what you're telling them. Like, but telling them about all the different land acts, and you can see
it's confusing. Yeah. But I suppose the same with famines, or even the sieges in Limerick. I was reading last night now myself about Ireton's siege, and about what happened about Ireton, how he came here, and he was afraid of the plague because the plague was rampant in the city at the time. But that's years before. That's 1651.
Yeah.
And which is, it's 50 years before the next one came, we'll say, that you don't realise the distance in time. It's kind of hard to get it into your head.
Wasn't his wife Bridget, was she? No.
The which?
Was his wife Bridget? Irish.
Irison's, his wife, Bridget. You have to believe as well that if he hated the Catholics so much, why did he call his daughter Bridget? His eldest daughter. She married Ireton, but then she remarried Fleetwood, who was another lieutenant in the army, which reminds me of a book that I have. I don't know when the library is going to reopen, because I have a book belonging to them since last February. I have a book. And
let's pay a fine now for having it out. So.
Yeah, but I must find out when they open. I give it back. Yeah. But it's a fascinating book. Well, fascinating for me. Called Providence. The title of the book is Providence Lost, by a man by the name of Paul Lay. Now, what got me interested in the book was reviews I read in the paper. It's great to read the reviews in the magazines on a Sunday, and this book got great praise from different people. Different people would agree with different books. But that's why I went into Mighton to know could he get it for me, and he did. But it's a fascinating book about Cromwell and what all the people that went to America. And of course, all the poor Irish that were sent, as they termed it, the Barbados. Because people often ask that, what happened to the people in Clare when the people were transplanted into Clare? The old saying, of course, which still survives, to hell or to Connacht. Because Clare was in Connacht at the time.
People forget that.
Yeah, and people forget that. Like, if these people were being pushed in, what happened to the other people? They were sent to the Barbados.
Yeah.
And there again, it's often on television. You see, what's that country that starts, Mauritius, isn't it? Mauritius. No, in the Caribbean. That island that have a St. Patrick's Day.
Mark did a program years ago on it.
Can't think his name of it now, the island out there. But anyway, it's that all the Irish were sent there, and of course they intermarried, you know, and the Irish names. There was a fellow interviewed one night on television now, and he was as black, dark, and I think his name was Michael McGrath. You know, and you'd wonder how he got the name like that. You know, the Irish intermarried out there. But the amount of Irish that were sent out to the Barbados as slaves, there's no talk about that.
Yeah, no. I mean, like, and it's interesting from the point of view of how the families went out there. And to make a great series about the Irish people going to there. Even if you had Who Do You Think You Are for somebody, you know, I saw some, like, that problem, Who Do You Think You Are, can be fascinating. Sometimes it's, you know, overdone with the team. They all have to cry in, like even the Irish one. But I was fascinated one night. A lady discovered that her ancestor was a slave. She was a slave, and she married the slave owner, who died, and she then became the slave owner, and became, as she discovered that she was as brutal as the husband. She treated her slaves very badly, you know. And like, I saw Roots on last night on television. They're showing it again, and I know it was over. It was probably exaggerated, but it was terrible. And then I was thinking about this whole statues thing. Like, where do you stop? I know you've discussed this before, but like, do you pull down everything? Like, you have to demolish the city of Bristol if you want to do that.
Imagine it. You know, what is the point of putting down these statues? You know, I don't see the logic in it.
That Lucy Wortley was interviewing a guy one day in America, and he was pro-South, and he said, I thought he was very reasonable. He said, well, just don't pull them down. He said, put up a plaque and give both sides and say, like, while this guy, you know, did as a politician, he did own slaves. He was, you know, and, you know, rather than just pulling it down and throwing the river, and, you know, it's so destructive, you know.
I mean, it's a pity. You know, there's a few statues all right now in Ireland I'd like to pull down, okay, but that's a story for another day.
And they never owned slaves.
You know. but it's a pity that there isn't more interest in local history. I mean, we had the outing there now last week. We were looking at there before the new rules came out. But like that, even in streets, certain streets, the history that's there, that we kind of forget about. But it's great to get somebody involved that knows something, and they kind of add to it. You know, they have a little bit that you wouldn't know. You wouldn't know everything.
We're looking at that. I don't know what his name was. That he brought us into Madison's, you know, and people, you know, when I came to Limerick, I didn't know. I knew the Telecom Tower was there and Telecom were in there, and like, I just thought it was all houses or not. But when you see the extent of to go in and see the extent of Madison's site, like, you know, and Tom Tumey was worked there, and the guy who let us in could tell us the extent of the, you know. But when the new supermarket is built there, people will forget, you know.
Yeah, they will forget it, and even when you tell people that, again, it gets back to interest. I've told people about things in the 70s even, and they'd say, "Is that right?" They're really not interested. You know, it's a pity. Then I suppose it gets back to what you were used to when you were young. I was lucky that I had relatives all over the city, and we inflicted ourselves on them on a Sunday, you know, and they did likewise. But you got a great communication with the other part of the city.
Yeah.
And then you were sent, which I hated, but now I'm glad I did. I was sent for what you call messages, groceries, you know, for my aunt, and I had to go to shops, the L&N super at a shop in William Street, and then I had to go from that to Lipton's, and she'd give me a list. But I got to know so much, you know, having to go to these places and walking around the street during the day and been living in the city. But then I knew nothing about the county. There were villages and towns I'd never been to. There's probably still the odd one or two in the county that I've never been to.
And it was so small, then you could walk from one end of it to the other. You know, I mean, people nowadays don't realise, you know, Jetland wasn't there, Crescent Shopping Centre wasn't there.
Yeah,
Park,
they don't. I tell people I worked in Jetland, they think I was outside packing groceries for Duns. You know, when I say I worked in Jetland. And Jetland was completely out. I mean, there was no public lighting from, if people are familiar with the city, from what the Ardu Hotel was, the Limerick Hotel. That was the last public light. There were no lights beyond that, all the way out. You know, it was just pitch dark. And I'd be hoping for a car to pass and just shine lights on a winter's night, heading out to Jetland. It was so far out at the time. Castle Troy was like 100 miles away. We just didn't go out there.
I remember I was telling my daughter recently what you told me about. Some friend of yours moved out to the Parkway there.
We did. Christy Benson. Christy bought a house just above the Parkway, and I went out in the car with Liam Dillon out to see Christy's house, and Liam Dillon thought it was hilarious. Well, how was he going to get in and out of town? You know, from Sonny above Dillon's garage. John Dillon only died last week, but just above Dillon's garage. And how was he going to get the children in and out of school? It was out so far. And now look at it, like you could nearly throw a stone out there now. It's amazing the way the city has changed so much in the past 20 years.
I mean, Castle Troy was only it was only a few country like.
Oh, it wasn't. It was real kind of an upmarket area. You didn't go there. You know, I remember again, you'd never walk down the South Circular Road. You'd no business there, and the North Circular. You'd no business walking around there. It's amazing that things have changed.
And you'd be spotted as a stranger there if you did, you know.
But they were all kind of, I often said them to people and to get annoyed with me, I said, there's no Limerick people, I'd say, living in the North Circular Road. And they said, well, I'm from there. But I'd say, but your father isn't from there. You know, there were all people that came to Limerick that had, I suppose, get back to the chip on my shoulder, who had handy jobs, you know, and that were at a guaranteed wage, and they could get a loan for a house, you know. Because you might remember when I had, what's his name on the other history program, Tad Morrissey. Tad was, I should call him Father Morrissey. He was the first principal outside in the new Crescent College out in, Crescent School out in Doradile. And Tad, when he went out, he gave me a list of people that were in the school. And I said to him, was there anybody from Prospect on your rolls? Yeah. You know, going to Old Crescent. The Crescent College was down in the Crescent. There wasn't. You know, they were a different breed altogether when I was a child. You know, you were afraid to walk in the same footpath as fellas who went to Old Crescent. Look at Terry Wogan went there. There were people that were, as my mother would say, well-heeled. Yeah.
But if you look at the names, like, people think the Crescent College got its name from the Crescent Shopping Centre.
But they do. They do. It's a pity.
Yeah, and
it's a pity.
You know, the Crescent, like, and the same with Bruce College, which was down where Bruce's bank was.
It's a pity that that's allowed to happen, you know. That shouldn't be allowed to happen, really. That people get confused and it ruins the whole thing. You know, as Bruce College, when it moved up from Bruce's bank below, which was down in Rutten Street. Even look at the state of the old town hall. I mean, it's disgusting. The state of that building down there. A lovely building. I remember that being the mayor used to be there. And why they can't do it up for the mayor, I don't know. It's really disgusting to see the state it's in.
Well, it has been, never, we probably won't live to see it, the Opera Centre. And like, rather than keeping the facade, they should make a building there and keep, you know, have it at the mayor's office, keep the history there, and to give us some life to the Opera Centre.
We'll go to that area, it would. It's like the old Limerick clothing factory above. I remember saying years ago that should have been made into a museum. City Museum should have been moved up there. for mainly two reasons: to brightened up that into the city on Edward Street. Plus, buses and tourists would have loved to have seen where the Confederate uniforms were made.
Yeah.
And the buses would have had plenty of room up there. But they've desecrated the place up there now. Look what they've done to it. Yeah. And they've ruined the whole place up there, which really it's a pity.
I was saying to that chap the other night, if they do get planning to the shopping centre, it should be called the Matheson's Plaza, whatever you want to call it. And Matheson's, O'Mara's, and Shaw's, those names should be retained. Just at least somebody might be curious enough in 100 years' time to say, what's Matheson's? Why is it called Matheson's? Or why is it called Shaw's? Or why is it called O'Mara's? Because anybody younger than us won't know what they won't know anything about the pig factories unless they read a book or learn about it. I think naming names associated with the area is important.
It's a pity, but then again, you're flogging a dead horse. It gets back to the planners. Then the only place I know that were very strict was Kilkenny, and it seemingly turned out. I remember making inquiries. Somebody told me all the planners were from Kilkenny. Whether that's true or not, I'm not sure. But at the time, I was told. And if the planners are from a city, but then I was looking lately at a list of mayors, and when I see who the mayors were for the past 20 years, they've gone out of the city altogether. They weren't even real, what I would call real Limerick people. They were made mayors, and they're gone.
Well, with the lady mayor, she was Barry from Cork. She's gone. What's her name? She was Barry. Her brother was the.
Yeah, she was Terry Kelly.
Terry Kelly, yeah.
Where's she gone now? They come in, made mayor, and gone from the city again. Joe Harrington was mayor. He's gone. There's a few more of them there on the list I was looking through, and I said, where are they gone? They've been made mayor. Yeah. Who decided they've been made mayor? Really, it was the political parties.
It's back to the Baptist system. One for you, one for me. Wasn't down to, which is the right way to do it,
But isn't it a pity that it's allowed to happen, and that basically, the new mayor now is from Newcastle West. A nice fellow, I know him, but he's from Newcastle West. Would he know what my Ross is, I wonder,
There's how many mayors we got now? Deputy mayors, county mayors, municipal mayors. I can't keep track of who.
Who's all these municipal authority, and the whole thing is it's a pity. And there is I don't think there's anybody in the council a member of the Historical Society, of the Limerick Historical Society.
Not ours anyway.
Yeah, well, I don't think.
Have one former mayor.
Yeah. Kathleen Layden, she's about the only one I can think of. But they've no interest anyway in local history. They're not interested. I'd love someone to argue and say they are, but I don't think so. I don't know any of them anyway. And even especially the county councillors, most people couldn't even tell you who they are. Well, there was an old saying. I remember back, if you read back in the old corporation, you see that there were one time there were 40 of them. And back in the old days, they were known as Alibaba and the 40 Thieves. And that's well documented. Now, the many we have now, I think it's up near 40 again. I mean, the whole thing is crazy.
Well, we had one guy, James Collins. I thought he knew his history.
He did. He was good now as mayor. He's the last mayor before the present one, isn't he? Yeah. But there are very few of them out there, And it's a pity they don't get involved more, or even ask, not alone me, but there are other people involved in history that could give them that advice, but give them a comment on something. Even that little brochure that I have behind me there now, that little tower you can see there, that it's a pity that's people often ask me now, what does that mean as the logo, which my daughter did for me there. That's Spillan's Tower. It was known as the snuff box. That is still standing down in the banks of the river, down just off the Dock Road below. But that should be floodlit. A beautiful little building that people don't even know it exists. It's a shame, really.
Come in the new road. Is it Condell Road they call it? Or the new road? You could see that it was lit up across the river.
Oh, of course you could. or even, especially at night now coming in, there's a little forlorn little light up in the top of it, okay, where the little flag is up in it there. It flickers every few minutes, but it's like a 20-watt bulb with the little flicker that's on it. But it's a pity it's not floodlit, to let people see it and they're coming in and to bring a kind of an interest. But then again, who cares,
Accessible. I went down to take a photograph one time. I drove into the industrial estate down the end. It's called a fireplace there. But you drive into the back and there's gates up there. It's all blocked. Now, maybe it's good to keep out the cider parties, but for tour groups, it's very hard to get in there, and to get keys to the gate. So you have to look at it from afar. But as you say, if it was lit up, it wouldn't be targeted by vandals or...
No, it's like even some of the monuments in the various graveyards we have around the city, but the old saying goes, then there's no votes in a graveyard. That councillors are not interested in graveyards, really, unless it's something local committee, and then they'll stand up and they think they'll get a vote out of it. But, the graveyard, St. Patrick's graveyard is a disgrace up there. People don't even know it's there. The military graveyard down the Island Field, people don't even know that's there. People have said to me, a military graveyard, where is it? You have to try and explain,
In that country, unless local groups do it themselves, and clean up the graveyard, it won't be done,
No, it won't. But it's a shame. But the ones in the city itself, like St. Patrick's, look at the graveyard in Killalea, it's really an open space. And then again, people don't even realise it's there. People took the headstones off and put them into their gardens as a kind of a defence thing. And it's a shame, St. Michael's graveyard below, behind the granary. And people are fascinated there's a graveyard even there.
I went in there to look at it there recently, and there was empty 6-packs. It's a part, and they've closed it off, but still they've closed it off at night time. But people get in there.
I can. But then on top of that, if you want to go in there at night, where do you get a key for these places? Who has the key? It's really impossible.
Yeah, you can't get in at night time. Unless you're one of the boys drinking cider, they can get in. But I was showing the person with me, this grave there to Richard Lynch, and not the other fellow. No, this is Richard Lynch, an immigration officer, and he was he's forgotten about. He was the immigration officer in Limerick. He was appointed in coffin ships and that, and he especially for women going abroad, he did a lot to improve their conditions. And his headstone is in there, and it's been damn people are leaning against it for cider parties. I think there should be even a little plaque in the grave or a sign saying that the headstone's here. Tony Browne's buried here, Richard Lynch, whatever, and just little things about them. Even if you didn't get into the graveyard, just let people know who's in there.
It's a pity. It's really a pity, But sometimes you think of flogging a dead horse, But I suppose, the Jewish graveyard, people don't even know the Jewish graveyard is there. Luckily, that's fairly maintained. The Quakers' graveyard, of course, is very lucky that that's looked after by the Quakers themselves.
My son was renting a house out and he asked me, "What's that over there?" And I said, "That's a graveyard." He said, "Who's buried in there?" It's a Jewish graveyard. And like that, the boys in the house thought I was joking. They didn't know that a Jewish graveyard existed. And he said, "Is that Jews in Limerick?" And so I said, that's a long story.
Yeah.
So as you say, you were out there with the chief rabbi, weren't you?
It's funny that he came down to see the graveyard, and he had security with him as well, I could see. But sitting in the car watching me. But like that, it was good to take him around and talk to him about it.
Yeah.
And at least it's in some bit of shape, because the grass, I remember being there with Kevin Hannon about 1970, I suppose about 1977, 78, and the grass was up to my knees. And it was in a dreadful state. But then, luckily enough, the last two burials, I was at what's his name's funeral, Stuart Line, Stuart was well known as a scrap dealer in Limerick. Stuart is buried there, and Louis Fine, who was a jeweller, he's buried there as well. And at least, if there were more, when there are more burials, it kind of brings the place back into somebody use, you know. But if there are no burials there, St. Patrick's above, there are 2 bishops above in St. Patrick's graveyard. And I'd say now, not being smart, but I'd say the present bishop wouldn't even know that. You know, would wonder, like, would he know at all what St. Patrick's graveyard is? You see, the 3 years ago was that the priests especially were sent back to their own parish, and they knew everyone and everything. They were the greatest intelligence you could have. Even the KGB based their intelligence on the Vatican with the intelligence that they had. But like that, those days have gone now with the decline in priests and that. Those days are kind of coming that the local priest now probably wouldn't even know unless he's from the diocese itself. But changing away.
Speaking of the Jewish graveyard, is the bat still in the bat house there, or is it taken away?
The which?
Bat. The bat that was stolen.
Oh yeah, that's no. The way that has gone to, I was inside the little house, the little what do they call it? Tahara, I think is the proper pronunciation of that. When it was stolen a few years ago, and it was sold to a prominent scrap dealer at the time for £10, and he didn't know where it came out of till he asked this man to have a look at it, and when he looked at it, he said that was stolen. And the man said, how? He said, that was stolen from the Jewish graveyard. That's a little bat, he said, if you look at the shape of it, because it wasn't your ordinary everyday bat, it was something you kind of sit into with a back on it. And he said that's for washing of the bodies before they're buried. When your man have that, he said, get it out of the place. I don't know where it actually went to, whether it went back. I don't think it's in that little, because I was in that and it wasn't in it. Yeah. Where the bat went to, I do not know. It was a real cast iron thing with a little Star of David on it.
Yeah.
But where it went to now, things just disappear. It's like I said last week, the big huge line that was over the house above it, the what you call the British Legion had. Yeah. Where has that gone to? Probably just broken into smithereens and done away with. It's a pity that things are just dismantled and broken up.
Yeah, it's really like there's lots of things like horse troughs and fountains taken away and for safekeeping.
Just broken up. Yeah.
And I put in people's garden. You know.
It's a pity. Luckily, I think there are 2 horse troughs still survive. One is out in where the South Circular Road meets Ballinacurra, and that makes a lovely flower. There's a flower bed, and I can't think now. There used to be one. The ones in William Street have gone. There were ones there at the old toilets in William Street, and then again, it's a pity they've gone. Those public, the public toilets in William Street. All that's left there is a square of ground where you just cross over the road.
There was one below at Matcher Bridge, wasn't there?
Oh, there were lots of those public toilets, but then again, I suppose they were being abused.
The house trough.
And misused, like what's his name, like George Michael in Los Angeles, you know. So it's a pity that they've been taken away over the years.
We attended a very interesting lecture one day in the Hut Museum about public conveniences. Remember that? The history of the public conveniences.
Oh yeah. But like that, well, the ones in William Street, do you know what they were very handy for? When a fellow was going to a funeral, and if he didn't feel like going up all the way up Mulgrave Street, and the funeral had come from one end to the other, we'll just say from St. Munchin's Church and up William Street. And if he didn't feel like going, he could go, pretend he was going into the toilet and wait inside for about 10 minutes till the funeral was gone. Then he could come out and go way down the street. So no way of not being seen to leave the funeral, going back up Mulgrave Street. Because Mulgrave Street was a long walk.
The name of being at the funeral.
Oh yeah, just to show a lot of people still do that. Just get the name of being there. Because as David Hanley said that when he going to school every morning, he used to pass, when he going down to the Christian Brothers for St. Patrick's Road, he passed the mad, the bad, and the dead, the mad and the bad, coming down Mulgrave Street every morning. That when you think about it, that the Prince. But then again, when they were built on that location there was nothing there, just a straight roadway going up, going out into the countryside, going up to the Black Boy Pike above.
Yeah.
Which again is another name that really has been kind of abandoned over the years, you know, as the Black Boy Pike.
Can't use that anymore. It could be racist or associated with straight.
What could you call it now? You know? Oh God, here's funny. some of the names.
Yeah. When I grew up in Glen, if a fella got into trouble with the law, they'll say, where is he? He's in the back of Shaw's. Oh, I never knew what it meant. But when I came to Limerick, I realized.
Yeah. It's funny, really, that you wouldn't think, what is the back of Shaw's, you know? And that was never used in Limerick now, because everybody knew what the jail was. You know, they just say it's one Mulgrave Street, never the end of it, you know. But then again, you could say, is she dead? You know, she got up to Mulgrave Street. But the extension to when the graveyard opened up above in 1853, Mount St. Lawrence opened up, and that was really got the manor. It was really out in the county, you know, because the boundary finished above. Actually, the boundary mark is still there at the gates of St. Joseph's Hospital. There's a boundary mark there where the city went into the county, and because the city was very compact, it finished above at Punch's Cross. Yeah. And you were gone into the county after that till it was extended, because the man that did the most of gerrymandering on that was Pierce Shannon. Yeah. The boundary finished from the Carberry Road. It finished at O'Dwyer Bridge, which people constantly mistaken and call it Arduncle Bridge because it's Arduncle Boat Club. Yeah. But that's O'Dwyer Bridge there, and he lived outside in where St. Munchin's College is now, so he was able to get the boundary moved to take in his house into the city, out to Arduncle Bridge. The city is most peculiar where it lies, because the whole county of Limerick is a rectangle, and the city is up in the top right-hand corner, because you go into County Clare. There's no county borough there. You go from the city straight into County Clare when you go over that Arduncle Bridge. And same on the Clare side, on the Ennis Road side, when you go to Lansdowne Bridge outside, where the 2 mile in, you got into County Clare, and the same in the Newport side.
Well, Pierce Shannon was an interesting character. You did not on him on the last.
The last edition, yeah. He was a funny individual. I mean, the imports and exports they were doing at the time was hard to believe. But that and Francis Bate, the amount of lumber that he brought in from Canada, you know, that it's the ships that he sent up to St. Lawrence, you know, bringing people over and then bringing back timber back into Limerick for all the buildings that were going on.
Well, he'd have to put ballast in if he didn't have people. So
would have had, whereas the people are handy. But they did the same in England, as most people know. You had this triangle where they brought the goods that were needed for England in their occupation of South Africa. All the goods were brought down the coast, down to Guinea and that general area there along the coast of Africa. And then the slaves were taken from there across over to the Caribbean or to America. And then cotton, which was very much in demand, was brought back to England. So you had this golden triangle all the time. The amount of ships that must have been on the ocean would be phenomenal. You know, you think of the amount of goods that were constantly travelling across the Atlantic.
There's a great film about that. Amistad is what the slave trade.
Amistad, yeah. But then you'd wonder, like, with the amount. I never knew actually till about a year ago. I remember hearing about Guinea, how a guinea came to be. Which is not used now. I think it is still used. It isn't used even in horse stealing now, I wonder, with 21 guineas and 42 guineas. I remember as a child being curious about the 21 shillings. Yeah. But the guinea came from the gold that came from Guinea. That the coin was made from the gold from Guinea on the west coast of Africa. Yeah. But like that, the guinea is kind of, so it's a handy way of getting extra money, I suppose, an extra shilling in the pound.
Like the baker's dozen.
Bakers, more the same thing. Whereas when you tell children even now about pound, shillings and pence, they have the bull's notion what you're talking about, which is a pity as well.
My father, Tom, a friend of his who went to London, and his son one, and he went into the shop, and the wife tried on a fur coat, and it was not 40 guineas. He thought it was 40 shillings. Timbers close to him. So he said, don't take it after him. So he said, we went to pay here, realized
it's funny. Oh God, you can tell stories like that on there. It's like the man I told before that his daughter went to England and she wrote a letter home to dear Dad, I'm going with an Indian. Not the Indians now with the cowboys, she says, the other Indians. Because the father would have only known the Indians in the pictures, you know. He would be known the brother Indians.
I wouldn't know.
Tom,
Yeah.
I think we're talking an hour already as it is. I think
All right,
we'll come to the end for this. People probably get bored if they watch this, you know. But we'll do another one. And if we could get people to join the Historical Society, it'd be handy, you know. At €20 for the 12 months, and lectures and outings and that are free. And there's nobody makes money. You won't make money out of history, actually. Would you agree?
No. Right. You lose money. That's all you do.
Tell me about it. You know,
buying books.
Buy books and joining. And it's great that there are so many other historical societies out there. Unfortunately, they can't operate at the moment.
A mutual friend of ours, who's now passed away, as they say, died, said to me one day, he came in, he said, God, he said, if you're only pound for all those books you have, he said, you'll be a wealthy man. I said, Frank, I said, if you had all the money you spent on beer and Guinness and beer, you'll be a wealthy man, you know.
Yeah, this is what we look at, isn't it? Yeah. There are people say that you must, of course, when they find out you don't drink alcohol, the usual question is you must have loads of money.
Yeah.
You know, but I don't think we'll ever stop that, you know. Anyway, Tom, thank you again anyway for coming on, and we'll talk again some other day.
Okay.
Look to Tom.